Welcome to Better Business Results. My name is John Whitt, and I'm your host. We work with business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, and sales teams to improve their businesses in 30 minutes or less. I'm a small business owner, a published author, and a recognized leader with FocalPoint International Business Coaching, where we have over 180 coaches on all 7 continents. Albert Einstein is quoted as saying that compound interest is the most powerful formula in the universe. Improving your business 0.1% each day can generate as much as a 24% improvement in less than 1 year. You can engage and harness this formula for your business by creating 3 action items in just 30 minutes each week. Let's get started. Well, today our guest is Colyn Desatnik with the law offices of Colyn Desatnik. Colyn, thanks for joining us today.
Pleased to be with you, John.
So Colyn and I have known each other for a little bit of time, for a little while, and I asked him to come on the show and share a little bit about who he is, what he does, and walk through the Better Business Results formula. So Colyn, if you would, share a little bit about, how did you get into the law business, what's important, what's valuable for you?
Well, John, I think like many people in your formative years, you watch TV, you see certain Hollywood shows, and something about what's going on kind of like sticks with you, and that kind of makes you want to do a particular field of occupation. And as much as that field is over-dramatized in the media, it is something that has worked out well for me. I, as a young person, wanted to do law, never changed my mind, went through with it, have no regrets.
Well, what is it about law that you really like?
I would say in the days before money was ever an issue, it was the captivation with the idea of being able to deliver justice, being able to make a difference, being able to identify injustice, see the harm that it does, and particularly coming from South Africa, which was a racist society and an apartheid society, law was one of the tools that played a role in combating that, fighting it, and bringing a modicum of justice within a framework that was inherently unjust.
Yeah, so making a difference.
Making a difference in people's lives.
It's a legal tool.
Correct.
Yeah. So you mentioned something about money. When you say before money got, what does that mean to me?
What I'm saying to you is, I was never driven by the financial aspect of it.
Oh, okay. Understood.
In fact, just to tell you a very quick story, when I got into law school, there was an oversubscription, and the dean came in and he said, there are too many, we've taken 10% more than we need, and we actually want to encourage 10% of the people to leave. He said, the business school is across the road. If you've come into law because you think it's money-driven, and money is your main incentive, you'll do much better going to the business school. But if you're coming here and you want to make a difference in the society, you want to help people, you want to be a professional in the full sense of the word, and you're driven by that passion, we don't care if you sit on the floor, we don't care if you're on the steps, we'll accommodate you, we'll love to have you, but be here for the right reasons. I've tried to follow that.
Oh, that's excellent. So, one of the things about law that's fascinating to me is how many branches there are.
Right, and that's very interesting because it doesn't matter what your personality is. You can be accommodated within the rainbow of different fields that there are. So let's say you're very, inhibited, but you're still a lawyer, which doesn't seem to gel. But there are fields such as trusts and probate, and there's fields that involve you in very little in the way of having to present, but more in the way of having to do analysis, paperwork, etc., etc. So you can accommodate that kind of personality. On the other hand, you have trial lawyers who have, generally speaking, they're very charismatic, and they're very gregarious as people, and they're able to connect with juries. And you'll find that they may not have been the best students in the class. They may not have gotten the highest academic achievements, but they just know how to connect in the real world, and they know how to speak with passion, and they do a great job.
Yeah, people.
So
persuasive.
You've got that whole rainbow of opportunity within the legal field.
All right,
it's a
so
field I recommend to anyone.
Let's talk a little bit about your practice and
Right.
What is your ideal client look like? What practice, what area of the law?
So, John, in this regard, I've been a little bit, I would say, fortunate. Fortunate in the sense that I haven't had to analyze, I haven't had to formulate how I can be as effective as I maybe need to be. I've been able to have a little bit of a cushion because the field of law pays quite well. And if you're not looking to maximize your income, you can live a very comfortable income if you're diligent and you do your work and you're passionate about your work. And you just go about it without necessarily having to think through all of these concepts that you and I had an opportunity to interact with, and I've had the opportunity to have things dawn on me that I take for granted and I haven't had to necessarily institute. And I think the potential exists for me to do that, to become more disciplined and to benefit tremendously.
We're going to talk some more about that in a minute, but when we chatted before, transactional law is a part of your practice.
So basically, I've tailored my practice to the things that motivate me. So I do transactional law as a mainstay of my practice because I really believe in law that is, what should I say, protective of clients in advance. It's like in healthcare, rather take your vitamins and rather look after your health and find yourself in a hospital, even though the doctors are the best doctors there are. Try in the legal field to anticipate problems, speak to a transactional attorney, let him protect you, him or her protect you from the legal environment out there and the exposure you have to litigation. And then you don't have to, in the final analysis, find yourself in the hands of a litigator. Not that I have anything against litigators, but it's very costly. You're going to bleed a lot. And if you could have avoided those situations...
Yeah, you're talking preventive maintenance, really.
It's preventative law.
Right, preventive health care as opposed to waiting until the patient's sick. So that's your transaction.
So that's
business.
my transactional field. The other field that is aligned to transactional is immigration law. I'm an immigrant myself. I went through the immigration system. I got to sit on the side of the desk where you're the consumer rather than the provider of the service. I got to see what the lawyer who represented me was doing and not doing. I got to feel, there's certain things that I can naturally provide to my clients, that reassurance, that feeling of commitment, that feeling of, I'd say to my attorney, is everything on track? He'd say, it seems like it is. I'd say, am I going to get my green card? He'd say, should work out, and I never had that reassurance. And I felt insecure. And I feel that when I'm speaking to my clients, I give them I tell them there's no guarantee, but I tell them you're in the 90th percentile. It's going to happen. Don't worry about it. And if anything goes wrong, I'm here to safeguard you. And it's just that added little bit of assurance that gives people the ability to go forward in their everyday life and to feel good about the person who's representing them. And I try to fulfill that criteria. And then the third area that I'm involved in is personal injury. And how I came into that is I went into law with the idea of being a trial attorney in South Africa, where I came from. I was a trial attorney, and I found that starting my practice here, doing immigration law, doing transactional work, I never got into court, and I wanted to. And I feel you're not a lawyer in the full sense of the word unless you're going into court and you're able to do combat to some degree, think on your feet, deal with issues. And I think that's the real testing ground. So I've got my own practice, which is like my own baby in a way, which, I want to use the analogy of tennis. I'm an enthusiastic tennis player, and yet I beat most of the people that I know who are friends, and so they don't want to play with me again. So I had to teach my son to be a good tennis player. And, I kind of made sure that he was a competition for me all this time.
Can he beat you now?
He beats me now, so now I don't play with him. But I'm saying I grew my own competitor so that I could have a nice situation. Similarly with my law office, I've built it into a personalized customized situation where it's doing for me exactly what I need, what motivates me, what gets my juices flowing. There's enough stress dealing with clients, dealing with issues, dealing with the law, dealing with the other side, the attorney on the other side, etc., that makes it stressful. You've got to have that knowledge, recollection, and feeling that you're doing something worthwhile, you're doing something that, let's say they took my license away tomorrow. Whenever I'm having a bad day and I'm thinking, what am I in this field for? I say, if they took my license away today, where would I go? What would I do? What are my alternatives? And I say, thank God, I'm a lawyer. Thank God I'm doing what I'm doing. And it really works for me, even if I'm having a bad day.
Well, your story about being able to get in the courtroom, I think that's really important. And I actually have, and I'm not going to go into personal experience, but I've got an experience with an attorney that on the outside and all the discussions knew anything and everything, but once we got into the courtroom, it was like, it was a rookie. And the other guy we were dealing with was far superior in courtroom skills, and it made just all the difference in the world.
Absolutely, and courtroom skills are something which can be learned, by the way. Just to quickly digress, in South Africa they have actual schools for teaching courtroom technique, which I presume they have here, but I've never followed. But what's more important, they have as a specialty trial attorneys, and trial attorneys do nothing but go into court. The attorney provides a brief to the trial attorney, and the trial attorney only meets the client 2 weeks before the trial, prepares the client for trial, goes in and handles the entire matter,
that goes on the field,
but has not done any of the discovery, any of the evidence. The evidence is marshaled by the attorney who brings it to the trial attorney who just presents it. So they become highly specialized, highly skilled, and highly knowledgeable about each and every what I would call procedural rule, and where you might find someone, the experience you're mentioning, an attorney who can speak well, who has a good persona, but goes into court and suddenly clams up. The reason very often is he doesn't know all the procedural rules, he doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't know his way around, hasn't been there often enough, is not familiar enough, and gets intimidated. And it can be learned, and you can overcome.
Well, and I don't think going to court is always the right answer, and if you could avoid it, that
Absolutely.
would be far better.
We're on the same ground.
But sometimes you got to go in, and going in with somebody that understands that model,
Right.
understands that process, can make that happen is a big benefit. So, for transactions, obviously business owners, executives, these are ideal clients for you.
Right. So I'm looking essentially for business owners or people who are managing or operating a corporation, and they need to understand the legal architecture of their field. They need to understand what do they need to know in advance, that they need to look out for, that they need to avoid, that they need to stay on firm ground. So I look at their terms and conditions. I make sure they're in the right type of vehicle for conducting the type of business that they're in, that they've got protection in the event of litigation. I look at their contracts and their relationships with their employees. Do they have an employment agreement? Do they need an employment agreement? We're in a state of California where you're at will. If I'm representing the employer, I'm likely to say don't offer an employment agreement. There's no need to do so. If I'm representing the employee who's leaving a country to come and work here, and he needs some security and some sense of if something goes wrong, is there a fallback position, or is he going to be coming in at 8 in the morning and leaving at 12 with a knapsack and nothing to show for it, And
so I just want to skip a little bit there. So business owners, any particular industry or startups or established?
So always, one wants both. One wants startups because that's where you forge the relationship. The client actually sees you as being at the foundation of their development, and it's good for long term. But certainly where there's corporations that are running into problems, they're mismanaged, and they are not getting the legal advice that they require, I certainly like to come in there and try and provide that missing niche and give them the legal insight that they need in order to go forward
So
successfully.
startups, technology companies. Now, does that help?
Okay.
Does that also leverage your immigration?
Yes,
type?
absolutely. Most of the immigration work I do is called an H-1B visa, which is for computer people who are coming from overseas. We've got a shortage of technology in this country, and about 150,000 people a year are within the country are coming in from outside and are bringing computer skills and are working as software engineers.
You got about 150,000 people that need to come into the country because we've got this shortage.
Yes.
Right? And so you could do the transaction work and the immigration work for the companies that need that
That's
high-tech
exactly correct.
resource.
And in fact, I've got a number of high-tech clients, but they usually use me for the immigration per se, because to some degree they're big companies. As I've mentioned to you, I represent Seiko. I represent some corporations that are international.
What are some of the others? Seiko and who else?
So when it comes to others, I don't have big time names, but I've got clients who run 30, 40 employees, and they're considered small companies, but nevertheless it usually is that, for instance, I've got immigration clients who've come in, I've done their immigration. As part of their immigration, I formed their corporation. Their corporation has grown, and there are, to tell you the truth, one or two major successes of people that I brought in with immigration.
Tell us about one of those.
Okay, so I'm responsible for helping bring in someone who is the president of a public company that has produced unbelievable returns. They initially came over. This was someone who's a lawyer in South Africa.
Unbelievable returns.
Yes.
Millions, billions?
Billions.
Okay, billions. Okay. I'm just trying to put some scale to what's going on.
Yeah. Truly, on the NASDAQ, worth billions of dollars. Guy came over. He was comfortable financially. Today, he is perhaps one of the richest men in California.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was there at the outset, but they were doing very specialized work, and they needed to go to a very big firm of attorneys, which is what they did, and they went public, etc., etc. So at least I feel good I was there at the start, and they've made tremendous success of themselves. And I have clients, as I've mentioned to you in the past, who just if I brought them in from an immigration point of view, and 5, 10, 15 years later, I'll get a Christmas card from them telling me that they're in this part of America. They remember that I did the work for them. They remember that they were in another country, and they trusted me, and I was able to come through for them, and I was able to deliver, and that they'll never forget that. And now they've got 2 or 3 children, and they'll send me a postcard. And I will have even forgotten their names, to tell you the truth. But when I get that, it really reminds me that I'm doing something meaningful, something that impacts on people's lives. And so
that's validation.
That's validation.
So share one other story, if you would, about a particularly challenging or interesting assignment that you had.
I don't know how much time you've got. But
We're okay.
But I can tell you, I've had experiences in the law that I never thought I would have. From an immigration point of view, I did an asylum case that was extraordinarily unusual to me. You're dealing with someone who comes from a Middle Eastern country, who was coming to me, and she said, my husband has married a second wife without my permission, and I want asylum. And I'd look and I'd say, what's that got to do with asylum? That's a domestic issue. Firstly, I know nothing about second marriages.
Right, neither do I. Well, not at the same time.
At the same time,
yeah.
right. And she went on to explain to me, because I was ready to say there's no case here. She went on to explain to me that if she were to take up her husband and she felt that this woman, she had to allow this woman into her home. And then this woman was jealous of her, and she was jealous of this woman, and they fought with each other, and she ended up in hospital being poisoned. And she said to me, that poisoning is the reason I need to have asylum. So I said, all right, show me the connection. What did the government do? Basically you qualify for asylum if the government is going to persecute you if you come back to the country. So what's it going to do with the government? So she says, if I'd gone to the police and I'd said that that my husband didn't have a right to marry a second wife without my permission. He happens to be a diplomat, by the way. And if I then let it be known that I'm asking the police to interfere with this other woman who happens to be connected to a parliamentarian and the generals in the army, I would be in big trouble. I would be looked upon as having defaced the name of my family. I will be looked upon as someone who's brought contempt and character assassination to my husband, who's a diplomat, and I would probably never be heard from again.
Wow.
And suddenly,
so now asylum
I realize
makes sense.
It's an asylum case.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, can we pull this off? I mean, we've got to prove it to skeptical people, So what we did was, the first thing we did, we filed a divorce. And we had to serve a divorce to a diplomat, and they don't have to accept service. And it's outside the country. I'm sending it to a Middle Eastern country, one of our divorce complaints. And lo and behold, he receives it. He's so disgusted that she could take this position that he says, fine, let it be, and he signs the service and he accepts that. She's here in the U.S. with 3 children, and those children are now, she has custody of those children, and he doesn't realize that by signing this, we get a default divorce, and she's the custodian. And now suddenly he's coming to me and he's saying to me,
the tables have turned.
The tables have turned. Anyhow, so I just want to say, it brings in things that you couldn't have anticipated, you couldn't have written about, you couldn't have made up, and you get circumstances that are tremendously, I don't want to say intricate, but they're unexpected, and you learn and you grow, and that's what it's all about. So I'm one of those few happy lawyers, Again, that's not to say that I don't have my stresses from day to day, but as a rule, I would say to you that my clients have educated me. I've learned from their circumstances, their situations. I've grown. I feel blessed in many ways to be doing the work I'm doing, and by and large, one of the things, and when I mentioned money at the very outset, is that I've never made money the focus. And I'm spoiled in that regard, that I make enough money that I don't have to, and I live a lifestyle that I'm comfortable with. But if I am very, very, if I'm watching what the Joneses do, which I tend to try and not do, but to some extent
but sometimes you can't.
Right? And when I see that people that I've graduated with are possibly living better or more materialistic lives than I am, in terms of, I don't know whether they're happier or not, I can't comment on that, but it would appear that they are earning more, they getting more financial benefits from their occupation. I say, maybe I'm an underachiever. Maybe I should be listening to John and finding out what is it that I can be more disciplined about, focus on, what concepts do I need to know, and how do I implement them.
Well, I would tell you a couple things. Number one, I think your approach is 100% accurate right now. I mean, you're focusing in on what's important, and the result is revenue, right? And so, and that's what we always want to do, is we want to let the revenue or the money follow the actions, right?
Yes.
And so your actions are true, and they're pure, and they're based on who you really are, what you really want to do, and servicing your clients, and the revenue will come. Then the other side of that is, listen, we have to say, listen, how do we do more of that, right? Because at some point you're a 2-3 person firm right now,
right,
and there's a limit. There's only
right,
so much stuff that you can do.
Yes.
And we talk about how do we scale that. The other side of it is, and as we talked before, at some point you're going to scale back and not work anymore. And so, the idea was, can we turn this into an asset, right? A business asset.
Absolutely.
Which is a different animal, but
Right.
it's a business asset that has a brand that represents Colyn Desatnik and what Desatnik law offices really mean.
Yes.
And and this is the key that everybody gets into this, right? At some point in your life, right, you decide I'm going to slow down, I'm going to retire, I'm going to do that. If you have an asset, then you have the ability to sell that. If it's worth, somebody might buy that. The classic challenge you have in the technician role, whether it's a doctor or an attorney, is that when you stop working, then the revenue stream stops coming in. Right. And the way you can change that is if you build a business, if you build an asset.
We're 100% on the same page on that, John.
So let me walk you through this little slide deck, because I want to share this with the audience as well.
Yes.
So when we talk about, what I do from a coaching perspective, we're looking at affecting 4 key areas, right? Time management. How should I spend my time, right? How should I spend my energy? The team and the teamwork, right? So we talked earlier about leadership and personal leadership and discipline, but as you grow your team, and if you bring some staff on board, if you added further attorneys or something like that, then certainly managing them effectively would be important. Money, obviously we have to keep track of revenue, and so this comes into the sales and marketing activities that have to happen, because if you're going to scale, you're going to have to add clients. And then ultimately exit strategy is what we were just talking about. Where, at some point we want to move out, right? We're going to slow down. Me personally, I love this business because I don't see myself slowing. I don't see myself not coaching, but I see myself coaching a little bit less over time.
Same.
Right? So when we focus on those areas and you have a strategy and plan that addresses all 4 of those areas, what it does is it reduces uncertainty, reduces frustration, and it limits stresses. Right? Because you've got a plan, you've got a structure. So the way we look at this from a structural standpoint is we call it the stack. And the stack is a foundational component. And at the very bottom of the foundation is clarity. Who are we? What are we? What are we going to do? What products do we have? Who are we servicing? Who are our customers? Who are our competitors? What are our constraints? What are our strengths? Those are all things that are identified in clarity. And once we've identified what that is, and for you, we could spend some time talking about what are all of those things, because then we would say that's what we're going to scale.
Right.
Then we have to be effective. And effective is doing the right thing, but we also have to be efficient, right? We have to do it efficiently because the world is a competitive place, and if we're not effective and efficient with our time, it's going to be very hard to deliver our products and services to the marketplace. But once we've got clarity and effectiveness to a certain degree, then we can go to growth. And growth is really marketing. Marketing is exposing our products and services to the marketplace. We live in Southern California. There's like 18 million people in Southern California. It's a big enough marketplace for everybody. I know there's a lot of attorneys, but there's plenty of people, so that's not an issue, right? So we have to expose your business and your ideas and your concepts to the marketplace, and we're going to ideally expose it to people that are more interested or more likely to be interested in your products and services. At some point, though, we need to compel them, right, to want to buy our stuff. Now, people buy stuff all day, every day. They buy what they want, right? So the idea is to, if you have what they want, they're going to come in and buy it. So we have to create a sales strategy. And then ultimately we talk about leadership. And this is when you build your team, right? So if you were going to build your team and add team members, whether it's the sales team or the marketing team, or even if you're outsourcing those services, you may hire a marketing company or you could hire a sales company. You still have to manage that team, whether they're employees or they're outsourced or 1099s or contract labor, any of those kind of things. You have to manage all of those kinds of things. So understanding how that model works, right? From a clarity standpoint, I want to kind of move on to the next stage of the show, which is really, how would we take this and come up with some action items and strategies for you, right? Understanding that we've got team, time, money, and exit strategy as 4 primary categories.
So when I look at this, the one that hits home to me the most is the growth issue. To me, I want to say that I feel that I am well positioned to grow. Why I say that is I've had over 30 years of experience in law in America. I know my field. I'm confident in what I offer. I know why it can assist my clients and what benefits they can get from it. I know why it's cost effective for them and it makes sense from a business point of view. And I feel that I am, I've got good health. I'm experienced, but still not old in the sense that I'm over the hill, or that a newer lawyer would know more than I know, or that the field of law has changed so much that I'm out of date. Like some surgeons can reach that point, because medicine's changing so quickly with the technology that they use. I'm not. I'm very well positioned, very well situated, and I offer what is really the most valuable component from an effectiveness point of view, which is experience. Presuming, of course, one is standard and above standard, and I've always been that. And I also offer something which, to some degree, has been an underlying reason that my office has always done well without me having to do much about it, which is a level of trust and a level of personal attention. Clients, when it comes to law, they don't like going to an impersonal lawyer. They find lawyers to be a little arrogant, a little bit, standoffish, and my clients don't find that with me. I'm not like that.
That's not who you are.
That's not who I am. So my personality actually blends well with meeting clients, being with clients, serving clients, and retaining clients, and having them refer others to me, and it comes back to me without me having to be as diligent as you are correctly indicating everyone ought to be if they want to get to the top. And I'm not getting to the top, but and so I do recognize that those steps are steps I need to introduce and disciplines I need to focus on. But I'm saying to you that the growth is something that I really think I'm well positioned to, and I have the potential to take advantage of, and I'm not quite sure exactly how to do that and exactly.
So let's talk about that for just a minute.
Yeah.
Right? So growth, marketing, right?
Right.
How, I mean, there's 18 million people in Southern California, right. And you probably, can span geography. You don't have to just deal with Southern California, right?
Exactly.
So, A, what kind of marketing are you doing today? And B, how can we expose your products and services to more people?
Okay, so here comes the shock. Almost nothing. And I'm getting away with it, and I maybe shouldn't be, especially in a country as competitive as America and a state at the forefront like California. But I do know of many marketing let's say, outlets. From a personal injury point of view, I'm constantly contacted by groups that say, we just pay us X amount of money, we do the advertising, the phone will ring, and you just have to pick it up and it's a client. And we pre-screen the clients, and there's nothing you need to do except pay us and see what your return for your money is. And I've gone through it once. Having done that, I found it was good at a stage in my practice where I was trying to fill time. I'm not trying to fill time anymore. I'm trying to fill quality time. I spend too much time with clients who are not the quality in terms of returns. I'll be doing work for people who are individuals who are a little bit stressed with their financial situation, and I'll still work with them, and I'll still take a minimal fee or a lesser fee, or in some cases no fee, if I can connect with the concern and if I feel that it's the right thing to do. There's this school of thought in the legal field of doing pro bono work. It's encouraged, and I don't mind doing it, and I do it. What I don't like is when I do work and the client thinks it's pro bono, I don't, and it turns out to be pro bono.
Yeah, that's not as good. So in this particular case, what's happening is the target, this company service that you know, their target isn't necessarily perfect for what you're looking for.
Correct. It's not a good fit at this stage of my practice. They do good work for others, but not necessarily for me.
So there are literally thousands of different marketing strategies out there, and identifying that target and figuring out where are they and how do they hang out. We have this digital marketing opportunity, the internet, all those kinds of things. Lots of different opportunities to do that. So there's a lot of different ways, once you've defined what your market is, to get your message in front of those particular clients. And then one other thought I had is that if you were to scale and get bigger, right? If you were to bring on an additional associate, they may or may not take on the same level, the same height of client that you do, and maybe they're going to learn how to grow. And one of the things you do is you teach them, you share them, right? That's leadership, so they can get bigger, right? And at some point, if you want somebody else to take on ownership or management of this organization so that you can dial it down a little bit, that might be the ideal person. They ramp up to that. And so you may, as you expand from a scalable standpoint, decide that, maybe that other strategy is effective there, right? And we talk about multiple strategies.
Right.
We'd like to have somewhere between 5 and 10 different marketing strategies going on at any one particular time. When that happens, right, the roller coaster of cash flow and finishing jobs and having to go find another one starts to smooth out. It becomes much more even, right? But we've got to have the capacity and the system and the process to be able to handle it, right? So if they all jump in at one time, what happens? For you, I suppose, even if you got overloaded, you have other attorneys, you have relationships that you could do. And even for any other type of legal practice, right, you've got a few specialties. You've got people that that handle all the other components from a legal standpoint too.
Right.
An excellent resource in that case. So thinking in terms of action items for you, right? So we talked about clarity a little bit, about identifying the target. And we talked about different marketing systems. What are the things that you think you can do right now to start thinking or start moving your business in the direction of scalability that you're looking for?
Well, I would say to you, this is where I need a little bit of guidance. This is where I'm not sure which system would implement things most effectively. I heard you say you need multiple different layers of marketing, and I suppose it would be costly, and I'm not sure that I would want to expend money on it without knowing that I'm going to get something that's going to produce the returns I'm anticipating. So for instance, SEO, you can go out there and you can get anyone to get you onto the front pages of...
at least that's what they say.
That's what they say. How much is it going to cost me, and what is my return going to be? In the little bit that I've done, basically putting my big toe into the water, but not actually funding it to the point that it maintained itself all the time, I found that it wasn't worthwhile.
So researching opportunities
Right.
is a big first step for you,
Yeah.
right? What's available, right? We could look and we could say, what do other people do? What do other attorneys do?
Right.
Some of them go right onto television, whether you wanted to do that in the
Right.
story, but
Right.
that's one
Yeah.
option.
Yeah.
You definitely have various media outlets that you can operate with. So researching those and finding out what other people do, what's the way to do it, what are the ones that have the biggest return on investment. Some of them cost more money, but they don't take as much time because you hire somebody else to do the work, right? Some of them, if you're a networking person, if you go to networking events, I'm certain the bar has different events, there's lots of different things.
Right.
They don't cost as much, but they take time, right? And frankly, time is money, right? So you can balance those things out. There's a point in our career, in a point in our company where we've got more time than we got money, and there's a point where we got more money than we got time. And that's the balance that you have to figure out.
Yeah.
As you bring your staff on board and you decide how we want to grow this staff and how we're going to hire these people, they may do some of the networking stuff, right? Because they're, associates or juniors or however you set that kind of thing up.
I think very much along the lines of the analogy you once gave me when we were speaking about a doctor being able to do only his a field of expertise because he's got a staff around him that makes sure that all the administration and everything, including perhaps the marketing, is done mainly by the staff, and maybe he turns up to the event of the marketing, but he hasn't had to do the organization, the paperwork, the flyers, the this, the that. He's just maximizing his time, and I think that model is something I want to give more thought to and more consideration of.
Yeah, so great. The doctor is the product, right? You are the product today.
Right.
And so everything around you is meant to maximize your efficiency, and so that's another option. So understanding a model, right? That'd be one action item to go do there. Researching different marketing ideas. What else? Do you have anything else that pops up in your head? We try to get 3.
I'm really receptive and open to some thoughts in this regard. It's not that I don't have any, but I don't have any in an organized sense that I feel comfortable to even articulate. So I would like to hear from you as to what other thoughts do you based on the minimal association we have, I understand. But what do you think I should perhaps be entertaining?
Well, there's a variety of things. So I could tell you that I recommend the digital marketing arena for everybody.
Okay.
The internet is not going away.
Right.
It's just getting stronger.
Absolutely.
Video is the strongest component in internet marketing today.
Okay.
I mean, it keeps people on the screen for 75% more time. The longer they're there, the more likely it is something else to do. So I really think that putting together a quality video or quality digital marketing strategy is an absolute necessity for any company that wants to scale and grow.
But then you have to get people to the site, so you've got to then employ SEO.
Well, that's all part of the digital
Right.
marketing strategy, right?
Okay.
So yes, so you could employ SEO, you could employ social media. There's any number of different ways that we would go about that. The other thing I think is that you would be very good as a speaker, sharing your stories, and often we can put together a compelling talk or a story and invite people to come hear that, where you're giving them a message and you're teaching them something and they're learning something. At the same time, they're getting a chance to meet you, you're getting a chance to meet them, and there's an opportunity for them opportunity for you to expose who you are, what your services are to a broader audience. I mean, those are a couple things that I think really fit really well. But there's a lot of things out there, and so we'll do that research and do that. So,
Okay.
So identifying different marketing ideas, office, organization, structure.
Right. And the other thing that I mentioned to you, John, was that I'm anticipating certain legislation coming in the
Right.
not too distant future, hopefully still in my lifetime. And I've prepared a business plan around that. If that does happen, which is more than 50% likely, I've got people in place, various champions who will be handling various elements of the rollout of a national amnesty service, a program for undocumented aliens in this country. There's at least 11, 12 million of them, and they live from day to day uncertain about their future. There's philosophically there's a divide. There's the people who feel, well, you've entered illegally, you don't have the right to be here, so if you're having a tough time, too bad, you created your own problem. There's that philosophy. There's the other philosophy, well, there's a statute of limitations on everything. If someone's been here for 20 years, their children grew up here, they're citizens of the U.S., and their children, some they brought over when they were 2 or 3 years of age, and they go get their driver's licenses and they ask to give their birth certificate, and suddenly they find out they were born in Mexico and they didn't know it. Comes as a shock to them. They're American in every way. And so the government has essentially allowed a situation to develop, and they've got to bring the law into line with the reality, because the reality can't coexist with a legal system that calls these people illegals. And yes, there was a time when illegal was the right term, in my opinion. Today, when you've allowed 20 years to run with this, it's undocumented.
Well, the definition of illegal shifts a little bit, right?
Correct.
So if it's somebody that comes in illegally tomorrow,
that's illegal.
That's still illegal,
Correct.
right? But somebody that's been here, lived here,
Exactly.
productive member of society. Yeah, well, this is a topic for pay grades much bigger than mine.
Okay.
But I'm interested. I love to talk about it.
And so essentially, I've got a very well worked out plan. I've got funding. I've got everything laid out, and it's collecting dust on a shelf at the moment
Until
the
this event
legislation
happens,
comes in.
hopefully in your lifetime.
And if it does, then I'm going to have a little bit of a shift from being a lawyer to being a businessman, because they want me to basically control the whole operation, and they've got confidence in my ability. I started practicing in the 80s, and I was an immigration lawyer for the first amnesty, which took place in 1985, 86. And so I know exactly the concerns that the applicants have. They're illegal and they're applying to an organization that has been deporting them. Now, is that organization going to protect them and give them a benefit? So there's a lot of anxiety, etc. I understand the mentality. I understand how the forms work. I understand how the government approaches this, and I understand the security that I can afford these people in feeling comfortable about going forward with their applications and that they will succeed. And so it's a win-win proposition. I'll have the, God willing, I'll have the opportunity of being a businessman in my life as well as a lawyer.
Well, but first and foremost, it fits the guidelines of how you want to live your life and how you want to service, right? Being a businessman is part of what you're going to have to do that, right? And generating revenues is going to happen along with it because you're doing the right things in the first place. And I always try to really engage my clients to be congruent, right? Who are you? What are you? What are you trying to do? Let's focus on doing that and doing that as well as we can to the best of our ability. And the results will come.
Yes.
The results will come.
Yes.
Colyn, I really want to appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us
I
today.
appreciate everything. I appreciate your educational guidance. I appreciate the concepts you bring to bear. I appreciate you using me as a sounding board because I really benefit from it and I really learn from it. And you're a great mentor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colyn. Thank you for coming on the show. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, contact BusinessWhitt at www.businesswhitt.com. Filmed in studio at John Whitt Enterprises, Advanced Coaching and Marketing Solutions, 2 Park Plaza, number 450, Irvine, California, 92614.